of the ulama of Mecca. He was the mufti of the Shafi'is there because they had muftis for each madhab. And he was the head mufti of the Shafi'is. After him came the great Imam and Sheikh and the mufti of the Shafi'is in Mecca, Sheikh Ahmed Zaini Dahlan. Ahmed Zaini Dahlan is very famous, and he wrote the book Fitnatul Wahhabiyya, the sedition of the Wahhabis. He wrote that book, and he was the mufti of the Shafi'is, and he was among the students of Habib Muhammad bin Hussein al-Habashi. So they were all great scholars of Mecca. They were the leading scholars of Mecca, the reference of Mecca. They were all Ash'ari, Shafi, and Sufi. So this to give you an example when I said learn about history and learning about chains of narration and learning about how the knowledge was conveyed so no one can pervert. So these ideas, someone would try to say, oh, these are new ideas. No, they weren't. The Mufti of Mecca, his sheikh before them, and you go all the way back in a continuous chain. All of the scholars mentioned it, such as Ibn Hajar al-Haytami and Nawawi in his book Rawdatul Talibin. All of those scholars, they mentioned these cases. So if you want to see how the knowledge goes from generation to generation, you can see it easy. It's extremely important to know these chains of narration, to know those scholars so that you can protect your religion. Just like you want to protect your religion from falling into disbelief, you also want to protect your religion from falling into innovation and misguidance. And it is the way to do that is to know the scholars and know their books and know their histories. And why did they emphasize this issue? Because in their time, there was a big sedition and a fitna. And all of the people were leaving Tarim and going to the villages on the outskirts of Tarim. Habib Abdullah bin Hussein bin Tahir sent Al-Habib Muhammad bin Hussein al-Habashi to Tarim to teach and to revive the study of knowledge in Tarim when it had become emptied out of scholars because of the fitna and the sedition. And they built it back up before he went back to Mecca and became the mufti of the Shafi'is. And I'm going to have you memorize those names, and tomorrow I'm going to highlight it some more because I want these names to stick in your mind. One of the things you're going to learn in these classes is you're going to learn asanid. I believe, and many people don't do this, so I understand that, but I believe for us as a community, if we start learning these chains of narration, we start memorizing these scholars, we start becoming familiar with their books, we start becoming familiar with their methodology, we can change the tide in our country, in our communities, from being misguided in the name of Islam, right? So when someone comes today, like a modern group, and they says, this is our knowledge, I say, no, it's not. This was taught 200 years before you came. By him, by him, by him, by him, by him, by him. You see my point? And how you're understanding or practice it, and I can compare it by those who actually authored it, who wrote it, how they live, how their children live, how their students live, how they conveyed the religion. That's important. Then you can weigh stuff. If Imam Amin is going bananas, you should have something to weigh it by, right? So if you know about previous scholars, about previous knowledge, you can always weigh. And I'm saying even if it's just an honest mistake, you have something to weigh it by. But if you don't have no chains of narration, and you don't know the scholars, and you don't know the books, and you don't have no references, you're trapped. You're stuck with whatever someone gives you. And we as a people have been victims of that far too long, right? So it's extremely important. Don't just say, he's telling us, I'm not trying to impress you. I need you to learn. because we live in a time where there's a lot of people using the Islam for other than the purpose of guiding people to Allah. And I'm not blaming any individual. I'm just saying it happens, and we can't afford that. So if a person is right, alhamdulillah, we listen to his right and we follow that. But we need to know what is our religion and how did it reach us and how was it conveyed to us. That's extremely important. And I'm telling you, if we did that alone, we'd wipe out Wahhabism and Salafism in our community. It won't exist. If we did that alone, there would be no Wahhabis and Salafis prominent in our community, because we would understand that this is not the way of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. It would be clear. But since we're unlearned in these areas and we're not familiar with Islamic history, modern history, or even in the past, we don't know how Islamic knowledge is conveyed. That is a means to misguide us. So we should learn this now. We should have it. We say, no. You saying this is bid'ah and this was innovation. But this was Mecca before you came. This was Medina before you came for centuries. Before the advent of, and this is only going back to the time of World War I. Prior to that, Mecca and Medina was Ahl Sunnah, Ash'ari, Maturidi, Shafi'i, Hanafi, Maliki, Hanbali, Sufi. That was the way for generations until the coming of this group. So this is important knowledge, but not just theory. I want you to know the people, be able to, and don't worry, I'm going to expose you to the books, right? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to show you, I'm going to point to you. And inshallah, in time, you'll have it well. But you got to study, you got to memorize. So when I give you something, memorize it. Don't just put it on the shelf. I give you this chain, memorize them, know the people, and because I'm going to talk about them, right? And this way you protect yourself, right? Our chains of narration are our protection in terms of how we get our knowledge from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? Just when we were reading in this, knowing the difference from Ibn Hajar al-Haythami and Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, it's important. Only way you know that is by knowing these asanid, knowing these scholars, knowing who relates from who, knowing which books, who authored which books. This is important. This is a tradition. This is how we got our religion. No other religion comes like that. It's important. Don't let nobody tell you just skip everything and just go to the Quran and Sunnah. No, that's not how the Quran and Sunnah reached us, by skipping generations. No, we got the Quran and Sunnah by an unbroken chain of scholars to our day. Don't skip that. It's extremely important, especially in distinguishing guidance from misguidance, our Islamic tradition from newly invented matters. If they cut that chain, they cut you off from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Don't allow anyone to do that. And if they don't have it, as we said, faqidu shay la yu'ti, the one who doesn't have a thing cannot give it. So go back, please memorize those chains, and that's just the beginning, because this is the books we're learning, and these are routes. So even if I was to pass, you know where to go, you know some routes, you know, you have something, right? It's not about calling to ourselves. Learn this thing, learn these matters well, so that if something happened, you always know, I took this amount, I know this amount, I know this knowledge, I learned this, and I know where else to find it, right? I'm aware, I won't be lost, because we have generations to protect. Inshallah, may Allah reward us all, may Allah increase us. I'll take up your questions, I'll come online and answer them as we're out of time. And whatever questions, I'll go and I'll answer through the chat, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum wa jazakum Allahu khaira wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam Muhammad wa alihi wa sallam. So tomorrow,